Webcomics. What the heck are they? How do they work? Am I a webcomic? Are you a webcomic? Is this a webcomic? Is that 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 a web... Apologies. The YouTube video bot CD started skipping. I love webcomics. I adore webcomics. Webcomics are my one true love. Everything I do is dictated by my love of them, and the foundation of this channel is me talking about webcomics, both ones I make and ones I don't make. So like, what even are they? According to Oxford Dictionary, a webcomic is a series of comic strips published online, but wow, that's not even remotely encompassing. I mean, for one, that definition doesn't even include comic strips are, well, usually just the sort of comics you'd find in a newspaper. Short, comedic, and easy to read. Social media is the most likely place to find comic strips online. Instagram especially caters perfectly to the daily templated panel format. Hell, even some of my favorite old school newspaper strips like Foxtrot have taken to posting their strips on Instagram. You can find all kinds of comics on social media, from slice of life comedy strips like Litterbox Comics and Crow Time, to full-on overarching stories like Rodney R. Rodney, or the shockingly thriving community of Danganronpa fangons over there. Though, I mean, there is an argument that comic strips can include comic books and graphic novels. While I personally consider comic strips and comic books different, it would appear that Oxford thinks that they're one and the same, stating that comic strips are a sequence of drawings in boxes that tell an amusing story, typically printed in a newspaper or comic book. Amusing is an interesting choice of words. Interesting of them to kind of soft lock out any comic that isn't a comedy. Hey, wait a second! Comics are specifically drawings in boxes? That still doesn't include home. For long-form storytelling, there are two routes open to the current-day webcomic author: making your own website or using one of the available hosting platforms. Comics on Webtoon and Tapas have a specific mold that they must be forced into. They prioritize reading on phones, which leaves you a limit of only showing 1 or 2 panels at once, maybe 3 if you really cram them in. If you look past the format and file type restrictions, though, Webtoon has a whole world of different genres and styles to look through. From the fantasy high school romance turned cosmic horror Space Boy, to the energetic shonen-esque fantasy romp 4-Leaf, to the comedic fairy tale romance of Cursed Princess Club. You can find a beautifully crafted story in whatever genre you want, if you're willing to dig for it. Also, I just listed originals here because I tend to prefer to read indie comics on their own websites, but like, don't ignore Canvas if you won't read indie comics anywhere else, please. We're starving over there. Own website webcomics are, by all intents and purposes, some of the last remnants of the original generation of webcomics, back before Web 2.0 forced everyone onto the same few social medias and Webtoon. As one of the oldest manifestations of comics out there, comics hosted on their own websites are essentially comic books, but posted online. The mindset of these creators is make pages as if you're going to print them one day because you are. These are the comics you'll see hosting Kickstarters to get printed most often. They're very traditional in their approach and came from a time when people had to use computers to access the internet, so they were allowed to use smaller text and wider panels. These types of comics are usually hosted on their own website, but for people without web dev knowledge, the comics will be hosted on Comic Fury, Smack Jeeves, formerly RIP, and on Tumblr. They're experimental and boast a much wider range of art and storytelling styles than your average webtoon. Posting on their own sites gives these comics a lot more freedom as to what they're allowed to do as well. And after a few years of the internet sitting with the existence of comics on their own site, comics started experimenting with what they can do with the web format. Most of all, Homestuck. Ava's Demon is a webcomic that is uploaded panel by panel onto its own website. The format of the comic is supposed to resemble that of a storyboard for a movie, and true to that movie format, the comic occasionally dips into full-on videos simply embedded into the website. Ava's Demon does have physical versions, and the uniform screen ratio panels make for a striking effect when printed. But Ava's Demon isn't alone in this. It's incredibly common for webcomics to include even small effects that would only be possible on screens, such as GIFs causing images to change, or even just having characters directly have a call and response with the audience. Yes, Tumblr Ask blogs count as comics, and you can't change my mind. And at this point, I'd say the definition of comic has been thoroughly degraded enough to talk about Homestuck. She said the forbidden word! Ah! Okay, so confession time. I read, honestly, pretty far into Homestuck in 2017 to 2018 or so, but I barely remember it and I didn't finish it because I kind of hated it. So most of my knowledge of it comes secondhand, and what I know about Homestuck is this thing even really a webcomic? Yes. Absolutely yes, no one has ever questioned that. That is what everyone on the internet calls it. People point to the website and introduce it as famous internet webcomic Homestuck. Homestuck is the most experimental, perfect example of what a webcomic used to its fullest potential could be. The story is written out using every possible medium the author could think of. It has background music, it uses both panels and chat logs to tell its story, it frequently fully animates the biggest moments in the comic, it has video games embedded in the story. Homestuck is a crazy, wild experience to wade through, and despite it being the mixediest of mixed media possible, it is still undeniably a webcomic. So I guess the question comes back into view. What is a webcomic? Sequential art, mainly made of static images, but not necessarily, and hosted on a site where you have to page between updates? The lines are so completely blurred that it's hard to say what does and doesn't count. I'm pretty sure I've even heard 17776 be called a webcomic before, and I don't think I'm quite ready to open that can of worms. A webcomic is anything the internet wants it to be. Webcomics are stories on the internet. They use sequential art, but due to the nature of screens, they're allowed to get funky with it. After all, aren't video games and animation just another form of sequential art? And that's exactly what makes webcomics so special to me. Webcomics are and always have been a hub for the type of stories that can't or won't be traditionally published. Webcomics are queer, they're bold and standing up for their beliefs. They're allowed to be more unique with their art style, and their page-by-page update format allows them to take audience reactions into account when writing. They're experimental. They push the boundaries and they utilize their mediums to the fullest potential. So who cares what the exact definition is? The webcomic community is a hub for people who want to tell their stories and push the boundaries of what is deemed right and proper for comics. You're gonna sit there and try and put that community into a box? Let me tell you right here, that is not going to work. Experimental creators are gonna experiment, and I will be right there on the sidelines cheering until my lungs give out. Sorry, comics. The internet kinda destroyed your definition, but my god, they're doing it in style.